What if I told you Rome, the greatest empire in history, wasn't toppled by swords and spears, but by money? Not wealth that empowered it, but wealth that poisoned it. Rome's story is not just about gladiators, emperors, and conquests. It's also a financial thriller, one of greed, inequality, bad money, and economic collapse. And today, we're going to dive into exactly how money destroyed ancient Rome. The golden age of wealth at its height, Rome was a money machine. From Britain to Egypt, taxes and tribute poured into the empire. Victorious generals marched home with treasure carts filled with gold, silver, and slaves. Senators flaunted their riches in sprawling villas decorated with marble, mosaics, and fountains. Rome was the wealthiest city on earth. But there was a catch. Rome's economy wasn't built on steady growth. It was built on conquest. Every new war meant more loot, more slaves, more land. The empire's financial system became addicted to expansion. And like any addiction, once the supply dried up, the system started to unravel. Inequality, the empire's first crack. The wealth Rome gained from its wars didn't trickle down to the common people. It went straight into the pockets of the elite. Conquered lands were carved into vast estates owned by senators and wealthy families. These estates, worked by armies of slaves, crushed small farmers who couldn't compete. Those farmers, once the backbone of Rome, lost everything. Many fled to the cities, where they became dependent on free grain handouts and cheap entertainment, what we now call bread and circuses. The divide between rich and poor grew wider with every passing decade. Rome had money, but most Romans didn't. And this inequality was more than unfair. It was destabilizing. The middle class, the people who held the state together, was disappearing. Society was splitting into two extremes, the ultra-rich and the desperate poor. The currency crisis, Rome's inflation problem for centuries, Rome's currency was rock solid. Silver denarii and gold aurei carried real value. But as the empire's expenses skyrocketed, emperors needed more money to pay soldiers and fund projects. The solution? Debase the currency. They reduced the silver content in coins, replacing it with cheaper metals like copper and tin. At first, the coins looked the same. But people quickly caught on. Merchants demanded more coins for the same goods. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Inflation exploded. By the time of Emperor Caracalla in the 3rd century, the silver denarius was barely silver at all. And by the reign of Gallienus, coins had lost nearly all their value. Imagine working all month, only to find your wages could no longer buy a single loaf of bread. That was life in late Rome, taxation, crushing the people. As the currency collapsed, emperors turned to taxes. And they taxed everything. Land, crops, trade, property, even urine collected from public baths. No joke, the urine tax became a real thing. But the wealthy often bribed officials to escape taxes. That left ordinary citizens and farmers to carry the crushing burden. Entire villages were abandoned as people fled into the countryside to escape tax collectors. Some even sold themselves into slavery because it was better than being ruined by taxes. Rome's tax system wasn't just unfair, it destroyed productivity. Why plant crops if the taxman would take them? Why trade goods if taxes ate the profits? The economy shrank, while the empire's expenses only grew. The military money pit. Rome's army was the most expensive in the world. At its peak, hundreds of thousands of soldiers needed pay, weapons, food, and land grants after service. As inflation rose, soldiers demanded more. If emperors didn't pay up, armies revolted. This gave the military enormous political power. In the 3rd century, the empire descended into chaos known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Dozens of emperors rose and fell, many murdered by their own unpaid troops. The empire wasn't ruled by law anymore. It was ruled by whoever could buy the army's loyalty. And loyalty doesn't come cheap. To fund it, emperors debased the currency even more, taxed even harder, and squeezed provinces dry. Rome was eating itself alive. Diocletian's desperate fix. By the late 3rd century, the system was collapsing. Then came Emperor Diocletian. He tried to save Rome with radical reforms. First, he introduced new, slightly more stable coins. Then he expanded the bureaucracy, creating a massive tax-collecting machine. And most famously, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, which tried to freeze wages and set price caps on over 1,000 goods and services. It was one of history's earliest attempts at price controls, and it failed spectacularly. Merchants refused to sell goods at fixed prices, black markets flourished, and inflation continued. The economy didn't stabilize. It suffocated. The decline of trader-Rome's money problems rippled outward. As coins lost value and taxes rose, trade routes broke down. Merchants stopped traveling. Provinces stopped shipping goods to Rome. Local economies became isolated. The empire that had once thrived on global trade, from Egyptian grain to Indian spices to African gold, now shrank into survival mode. Cities shriveled. Roads crumbled. Rome no longer felt like the vibrant center of the world. It felt like a starving giant, too big to feed itself. The final blow, debt and collapse. By the 5th century, Rome's financial system was beyond saving. Inflation had destroyed trust in money. Taxes had destroyed trust in government. And debt, both public and private, had hollowed out the economy. When Germanic tribes finally invaded, Rome wasn't a wealthy empire under siege. It was a bankrupt empire on life support. Its soldiers were often mercenaries, paid with promises instead of coins. Its people were exhausted, poor, and disillusioned. Money didn't just weaken Rome. It made it incapable of defending itself. The barbarians didn't destroy Rome. They merely finished what Rome's money problems had already started. Modern parallels. Now here's the big question. Does any of this sound familiar? Rising inequality, a shrinking middle class, governments printing more money, inflation eating away at savings, crushing taxes on the many while the wealthy slip through loopholes. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The same financial forces that hollowed out Rome are forces we wrestle with today. The fall of Rome isn't just ancient history. It's a warning. The lesson of Rome wasn't destroyed overnight. It was slowly strangled by its own money, by greed, by corruption, by a system addicted to short-term fixes. And that's the real tragedy. The empire that once ruled the known world didn't fall because it was conquered. It fell because it was bankrupt. So the next time you hold a coin or hear news about inflation and debt, remember Rome. Remember how money can build an empire and also destroy it.